I'm going to talk about the People's Gauntlet. So what is the People's Gauntlet? Basically, I got this idea. I was talking to my political junkies and on the show, and it came to me that it was after the show where it talked about the hidden case of the Justice Democrat, the fallen Justice Democrat. A lot of people, I saw some comments talked about, man, I wonder how Justice Democrats did they vetting system? Like, did they vet this guy properly? Now, me personally, Justice Democrat, I know it's Niko shaking his head. Justice Democrat is a 3-year-old organization. They're making mistakes just like how we're going to make as far as the MPP. Me doing case study QB, I can make mistakes in videos. You know, I'm just starting out myself. The main thing, though, is how do we learn from our mistakes? How do we improve? How do we get better candidates? And that's what I care about. And that's where this idea came from. So the requirements for the People's Gauntlet. The first thing is you have to create a website. You have to show that you're a serious candidate and have a website. Now, I would think that would be a given, but I saw Jimmy Dore and he talked about how somebody contacted him to do an interview. They wanted to get promotion. And he said, okay, sure, let me look you up. And he couldn't find the guy. He did not have a website. The guy didn't even, take himself that seriously.
Happened to me too.
It happened to Niko. Look at that right there.
It might have been the same guy, to be frank. I don't know. It might have been the same guy, but yeah, it happened to me twice at least.
Exactly. So that's the first requirement. You have to invest. I know it costs money. It might cost $100, $200. So you got to create a website. 2, you have to create a YouTube channel. Why? So that you can talk back to the people. We want to hear from you. We want to know maybe your latest take on the latest things going on in the news. But this is why you want to have a YouTube channel. The People's Gauntlet is going to be split up, and this could change later on. We might make this more advanced, but as of right now, it's 3 legs. The first leg is Economy and Well-Being Gauntlet. Here, we want our candidate to talk about these topics. And why I'm splitting it up into legs is, I don't want to have a clip where it's like 5 hours. Nobody's really going to watch that, but you should have a leg and have it be a good maybe 30 minutes to an hour. As the candidate, you give us what you feel, how you feel about a particular policy, a political topic, so that you can convince us that you are convinced yourself of that policy. That's how I see it. So the Economy and Well-Being Gauntlet, talk about cancellation of student debt, tax and reform, fair trade, expanding Social Security, etc. I have a whole bunch here. The next leg is a Justice Gauntlet. This is where you talk about the third Reconstruction. You talk about ending gun violence, LGBTQ equality topics, justice reform, housing as a human right, reproductive rights, police reform. Then we have the Democracy Gauntlet. I'm gonna let you guys can read that. Then you have the Policy Gauntlet. And as you can see, this is a healthy amount of information. And let's say 1 week you can do one leg, let that breathe. Maybe 2 weeks later you do the next leg. But this should be definitely completed maybe a year, or when you announce, you could have it already done and you could just start releasing them every day. I'll leave that up to the candidate. But basically, if you want our money, if you want our small donations, I want to see it come out of your own mouth, how you elaborate on these policies. And then the next step of this gauntlet is I'm going to talk to Niko. I'm going to try to reach out to the Humanist Report. I want to reach out to David Dole. I have Kit from HLM and his team. There's different progressive media that I'm going to say, when people reach out to you, I want you to be able to say, did you do the People's Gauntlet? No? Okay, go do this People's Gauntlet, and then I will give you my platform. Then I will consider giving you my platform. It's going to be a way to weed out the people who are serious from the people who are not serious. Okay, I talked enough about this. I'm going to go straight to the candidate, the previous candidate that ran this past cycle, and ask him what he thinks about it. Hector Osiguera, what do you think about this idea?
Yeah, so right off the rip, I think it's a great idea. What I would say is that it is a little bit ambitious, right? So for any one candidate, I think that you could hold this up as a scoreboard to say, how much do we trust you? But I think it would be a little bit difficult for a candidate to hit every single one of the points on the gauntlet, just because depending on how much time you have in your race, it's very difficult to come up with policy. You want your policy to be very well crafted, or at least I did. And so it's not something that you're going to just haphazardly throw up, especially because as a progressive challenger, people tend to hold you to a much higher level of scrutiny. So if you were to pull out a half-baked policy proposal, that could almost by itself sink your campaign. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's a good benchmark, and it's definitely something that we could hold people up to. But you should definitely be proud of it, because it is a very ambitious goal for any one candidate to be able to hit every single point.
That's exactly what I would want from this. Like, I want to know people's passions about each topic. So I would know if you skip over LGBTQ, for example, or if you skip over something else, or you give a little bit of lip service, I think people will be able to hear that in the video and know, okay, if that's something that's dear to your heart, I might have gave $100, but now I might give $5, or I might, or, you know, I think that's what people are going to be able to get from the video. So definitely, I know there's some touchy topics, and after I let Niko talk, I'm going to go into the advantages and disadvantages, what I think the advantages are and disadvantages. And I think one of them touched on what I'm so happy that you're here as a previous candidate to give your insight.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and what Hector said is true. But here's what I would say the main issue sometimes with progressives who decide to run sometimes can be. It's that they decide on a whim 2 days before an election's about to start, right? Because they saw some popular name running or about his seat's about to come up, and they didn't go in because, you know, maybe this is what they believed in, this is what they fought for. They went in because they saw an opportunity to take advantage of, which sometimes is okay. In a situation like Sima Hernandez, for example, it was cool when she did it, but we kind of know where Sima's heart is. But that's not always the case. And if you're running for the House of Representatives, the moment that you see a candidate win that you think is shady, you need to start running for that seat in January of 2019. You should be well versed in all the issues by March or whatever year it is. It was January 2019, whenever the 2018 race is over. But that's why I said that. But basically, what that does is now, and I love the YouTube channel I did, because I know that people they are partial to different issues based off of their personal background experience. And that diversity, by the way, is a good thing, not a bad thing, because there are going to be some policies that one candidate may be good on as a progressive that I may not be that well versed in, which is perfectly fine. However, it does put the onus on the candidate to make sure that you are as well versed as possible in everything that you can be well versed in. And that YouTube channel is huge, because I know from my experiences working on Tulsi's campaign, that YouTube channel kept her alive. Whenever they didn't want to cover certain things, she went to her YouTube channel and immediately covered it herself. Whenever it was time to bring attention, for example, to the families in 9/11 who were suing the city of New York, like Tulsi was the only candidate that took it seriously. And she was also able to use her platform to expound on that, which also got her more conservative voters who actually pay a lot of attention to that particular issue. It can be, I'm sure, a little bit challenging, but I also would hope that the progressives would accept that challenge and embrace that challenge, because you don't want to end up in situations like where we see some of our Congress people that we consider to be progressives in today, which is they get to a very controversial issue that may mean a lot to me or Hector, but that's not the issue that they ran on, and therefore they don't know a lot about it. And so the media, corporate media, is not going to give you that grace that we would give them. And they're going to hone in on it, and they're going to try to rip you apart from it, and they're going to try to expose you. They're going to try to expose you as not being a competent Democrat. They're going to try to expose you as maybe being a closet Republican, or try to make you look silly to Republicans, or they're going to try to rip away your mandate as a progressive, which we've seen them try to do to progressives in Congress and in local races time and time again. So I love the idea.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna ask you right now, do you endorse the idea, Niko House?
Oh yeah, I endorse it. I love it. Plus, you know, I'm a Marvel fan, so I'm an MCU fan. Anything with a gauntlet in it, I'm good.
So basically, if you want to get on Niko's show and you are a candidate, he's going to ask you, hey, did you accomplish one of the legs? Do you plan on finishing it off? Or did you do anything with the People's Gauntlet? Did you get, you know, maybe down the line you might get a accomplished badge, you know, a picture with a bet saying that you finished it. we're going to do, there's going to be a second phase of this idea, and I'm not going to release it just yet, but I'm very excited about where we're going to go with this. We're going to keep candidates in mind, like Hector.
We need it.
Burden.
We need it, man. I'm just saying, listen, y'all know, and we're going to talk about this later on the show, but listen, y'all know how I felt about Warren, and y'all know how I feel about Markey. And if Warren and Markey would have had to follow the people's gauntlet in order for people to give them the progressive credentials that they did end up receiving, we would have never had to deal with them. And like with Warren specifically, this election could look completely different if there was a people's gauntlet in play to hold her accountable.
So I'm going to go through the advantage. So some advantages that I see from this is you build a brand of trust-worthy candidates, potential for raising grassroots small dollar donations when you do these videos, potential for getting volunteers, access to progressive media pundits for interviews and more exposure. Now, some disadvantages: candidates usually hide behind platitudes, which allow less scrutiny. Mayor Pete, I'll throw that name out there real quick. If progressive reveal all of their policies and stances, it can be used against them by their opponent. So I could see one idea, one policy is Palestine and the Israel. I know that policy is always thrown as if you're against the Jewish community. So that's definitely a topic that I could see people might try to skirt that topic, but
and then that's something that people should know. There's nothing controversial about saying Palestinians should have right and Israelis shouldn't be assassinating people for being at a protest. Like, I feel like it's not controversial. It can be controversial in politics, but you're going to be asked that question. You're going to have to deal with it. And so why not train those candidates to deal with it now when the ball's in their court, rather than waiting for the ball to get into the establishment's court or the capitalist media's court?
Totally. So let us know in the comments below what you think about the idea. Would you be willing to give a little bit more money to these candidates? Would you like to see more of your candidates talk about policy? I would love to know in the comments below.